The ceremony hall was filled with light and noise. Cadets from 17 different species stood in neat rows, their dress uniforms polished and perfect. Above them, holographic displays showed the names of graduates and their achievements. Medals gleamed on many chests, catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. Instructor stood at the back of the hall, his tall frame casting shadows on the wall. His crystalline skin reflected the colors around him, making him look like a living prism. He was reviewing personnel files on his data pad, checking each graduating cadet one last time. This was his duty as senior combat instructor. He took pride in knowing every student's accomplishments. When he reached Cadet's file, he stopped. His three-fingered hand froze over the screen. The file showed her test scores first. Combat efficiency, 98%. Tactical analysis, 99%. Weapons proficiency, perfect score. Leadership evaluation, exceptional. Physical endurance, far above average for humans. Her record was outstanding. She should have been at the top of her class. Then looked at her commendations list. It was completely empty. No medals for training exercises. No ribbons for simulations. No certificates for special achievements. In 4 years at the Galactic Naval Academy, she had earned nothing. This made no sense. Looked up from his pad and scanned the crowd. He found easily. She stood in the human section, her dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun. Her uniform was plain, the only decoration being her cadet rank insignia. Around her, other humans wore at least 2 or 3 medals from training operations. Even the cadets had something. Had nothing. She stood perfectly still, her face showing no emotion. While other cadets talked and laughed with their families, stared straight ahead, noticed something else. She had scars, small ones on her hands, visible even from this distance. A thin line on her left cheek. These were not training injuries. They were too precise, too deliberate. After the ceremony ended, made his decision. He sent a message to his data pad. Report to my office immediately. 20 minutes later, stood at attention in front of his desk. Her posture was military perfect, but had trained enough soldiers to recognize the difference between academy discipline and real combat experience. Stood like someone who had been shot at and survived. At ease, Cadet said. His voice was deep, resonating through his crystalline structure. Do you know why I called you here? No, sir, replied. Her voice was calm and steady. Activated a holographic display between them. Her file appeared, spinning slowly in the air. I have reviewed your records. Your performance is exceptional. You rank in the top 5% of all cadets in combat skills. Your tactical scores exceed those of officers with 10 years of experience. He paused, letting the information hang in the air. Yet you have no commendations, no medals, no recognition of any kind. He leaned forward, his large eyes studying her face. Explain this to me, Cadet. Why do you have nothing to show for 4 years of outstanding service? Did not hesitate. Her answer was simple and direct. Because the missions weren't official, sir. Blinked. Among his species, this was a sign of deep confusion. What missions? Humans are still probationary members of the Alliance. You are restricted to training, exercises, and observation duties only. There are no missions. Yes, sir, said, nothing more. The instructor felt a familiar sensation, one he had not experienced since the war. It was the feeling of missing something important, something dangerous. He had felt it before, right before an ambush, right before everything went wrong. He dismissed and spent the next hour trying to access her full service record. The academy file only covered her 4 years as a cadet, but there should be more. Humans typically joined the academy at age 18. Files showed she had enlisted at 16, 2 years early. There should be records explaining this exception. Instead, there were gaps. Large sections of her file were marked with red text, classified authorization level Omega required. Had security clearance level 7. That was higher than most admirals. Omega clearance was something he had only heard about in rumors. It was reserved for the Alliance High Council and intelligence directors. What could a human cadet have done to require that level of secrecy? He contacted an old friend, Director Al, who worked in Alliance intelligence. They had served together during the conflict. If anyone could help, it would be him. The response came back within an hour, but it was not from Al. It was from an automated system marked urgent priority. Your inquiry regarding Cadet has been logged. Cease all investigation immediately. This is not a request. This is a direct order from Alliance Intelligence Command. Further inquiries will result in formal sanctions. You are forbidden from discussing this matter with anyone, including Cadet herself. Read the message 3 times. In 30 years of military service, he had never received such a response. Intelligence agencies did not threaten senior instructors. They did not shut down routine personnel reviews. They especially did not do this for cadets. Unless that cadet was something more. He looked at its file again, studying her photograph. She looked so young, barely into her 20s. Her eyes were dark and serious. There was no smile, just a neutral expression that revealed nothing. But had seen those eyes before. He had seen them in the mirror after his first combat mission. He had seen them in soldiers who had killed and watched friends die. They were the eyes of someone who had been to war. How was that possible? Humans had only joined the Alliance 20 years ago. They had fought no wars. They had no enemies. Their military forces were small and untested by galactic standards. They were the new species, the ones everyone watched with mild curiosity and some condescension. Yet this human cadet, this young woman with no medals, had eyes that told a different story. Shut down the file. He would obey the order from intelligence. He would ask no more questions, but he could not forget what it said. Because the missions weren't official. What missions? And why did the Alliance want them to stay hidden? That night could not sleep. His mind kept returning to the ceremony, to all those cadets with their shining medals. They had earned those decorations in simulations and training exercises, fighting holographic enemies and theoretical scenarios. It was all safe, all controlled, all official. Then there was, standing alone with no medals at all. If her missions were not official, did that mean they were real? Had she fought real enemies, faced real danger? And if so, why was there no record, no recognition, no proof? The more he thought about it, the more disturbed he became. The Alliance was built on honor and transparency. Every action, every battle, every sacrifice was recorded and celebrated. That was the foundation of their society. But somewhere in the shadows, a human cadet had fought in missions that did not officially exist, and the Alliance wanted it to stay that way. Realized something that made his crystalline skin feel cold. He had asked the wrong question. The mystery was not why had no medals. The mystery was what she had done to deserve them, and why no one was allowed to know. 6 years earlier, had been 18 years old and standing in a windowless room deep underground. The facility had no name and did not appear on any map. It was located somewhere in the mountains of Korea, hidden beneath layers of rock and security systems. Director sat across from her at a metal table. The director was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything. She had pushed a folder across the table, too. "You understand what you are volunteering for?" asked. Her voice was quiet but firm. Had nodded. She had read the documents 3 times. Once she signed, she would cease to exist in official records. Her family would be told she was serving in a classified military program. They would receive letters, but those letters would be written by other people. If she died, there would be no body to bury, no funeral, no grave with her name. "Why are you doing this?" had asked. "You are young, you have other options." Remembered her answer clearly, even now, because someone has to. That had been enough for her. Signed the papers and became a ghost. They called it Ghost Protocol. It was Earth's secret shame and desperate necessity. Humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Alliance only 2 years earlier, and they were on probation. Probationary species had restrictions. They could not serve in combat roles. They could not conduct military operations. They could not act without Alliance approval. But the galaxy was dangerous, and the Alliance was slow. Bureaucracy and politics meant that terrible things happened while diplomats talked. Earth's government had decided they needed an option that did not officially exist. They needed people who could act without permission, without recognition, without leaving any trace. They needed ghosts. Spent 6 months in training with her team. There was Minyu, the team leader, who was 28 and had been a Special Forces operator before Ghost Protocol. There was Sara, the pilot, who was 22 and could fly anything with engines. And there was the tech specialist, who was 25 and could hack systems that most humans did not know existed. They learned to fight without mercy. They learned to infiltrate without being seen. They learned to kill quietly and efficiently. Most importantly, they learned to accept that no one would ever know what they did. Their first mission came 3 weeks after training ended. The briefing was simple and horrible. The Syndicate, a criminal empire that operated in the border regions, had been kidnapping Alliance citizens. They ran slave processing stations, selling beings to the highest bidder. The Alliance had tried diplomatic channels for months. They ignored them. Officially, the Alliance could do nothing more. Starting a war over hostages would destabilize the entire region. Unofficially, Ghost Protocol would act. The target was a processing station on a dead moon called 9. Intelligence reports said there were 20 high-value hostages being held there, including the child of an Alliance Council member. The mission was to extract those 20 people and leave no evidence of human involvement. And her team traveled to 9 in an unmarked ship. They wore armor with no identifying marks. Their weapons had no serial numbers. If they were captured, the Alliance would deny knowing them. Earth would deny sending them. They would disappear, and the galaxy would never know they existed. They landed on the dark side of the moon, using the shadows to hide their approach. Hacked the station's perimeter sensors, creating a blind spot. Sora stayed with the ship, ready for emergency extraction. Minyu and moved toward the main facility. What they found was worse than the briefing had described. The holding area contained not 20 hostages but 300. Beings from 12 different species were crammed into cages meant for cargo. The conditions were terrible. Many were sick. Some were injured. Children cried in the darkness. The guards walked among them with shock sticks, hitting anyone who made too much noise. And Minyu took cover behind a supply container. They could see the 20 high-value targets in a separate section. The extraction plan would work for those 20, but the other 280 would be left behind. Minyu activated his communicator. "Command, we have a problem. There are 300 hostages here, not 20. Repeat, 300. His voice came back after a long pause. "Your mission is to extract the 20 targets. You are not authorized to deviate from mission parameters." Looked at the cages. She saw a child, maybe 6 years old, from one of the insect-like species. The child was curled up next to what might have been its mother. Both looked half dead. She made a decision. "We are taking everyone," said over the communicator. "Negative," replied. "You do not have the resources. Abort the expanded rescue. Stick to the mission." Minyu looked at. As team leader, this was his call, but saw something in his eyes, a question. She nodded once. Minyu switched channels. "Sora, change of plans. We are going loud. Prep for mass evacuation." "Understood," Sora replied immediately, could hear the smile in her voice. "About time we stopped being subtle." What happened next would never appear in any official report. Hacked the station systems and opened every cell simultaneously. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. Confused and terrified hostages stumbled out of their cages, not understanding what was happening. Minyu and moved through the facility, fighting guards. The guards were bigger and stronger, but they were not expecting a real fight. They thought they were running a secure facility. They were wrong. Moved like water, flowing around attacks and striking at weak points. Minyu was a hammer, breaking through defensive positions with brutal efficiency. They cleared corridors and directed the fleeing hostages toward the landing bays. Sora brought the ship around, but there was no way to fit 300 beings inside. So she made a new plan. She crashed the ship into the station's command center, destroying their communications and creating massive chaos. Then she ran to the escape pod bays and started launching every pod she could find. Guided the hostages through the confusion, sending them to pods in small groups. Go to these coordinates, he told them in 12 different languages, using a translator device. An Alliance patrol will find you there. You will be safe. They finally organized a counterattack. They had superior numbers and heavy weapons, and Minyu held a choke point, keeping the guards away from the fleeing hostages. Bullets and plasma bolts filled the air. Felt something hot slice across her ribs. Minyu took a round in the shoulder but kept firing. Was setting charges throughout the facility, preparing to destroy all evidence of their presence. A guard caught him in the open. The blast from a plasma rifle threw against a wall. Saw him fall and felt something cold in her chest. But got up. His armor was cracked and blood ran down his face, but he got up and finished setting the charges. The last escape pod launched with the final group of hostages. Counted them off. 300. Every single one was away. Time to go, Minyu shouted. They ran. Behind them, charges detonated, destroying computer systems and erasing all evidence. The facility shook itself apart as they reached their emergency extraction point. A second ship, piloted by Sora, dropped from orbit to grab them. They barely made it aboard before the station's power core went critical. The explosion lit up the dead moon like a small sun. In the ship checked her team, was badly hurt. His left arm was burned and he had a concussion. Minyu's shoulder wound needed surgery. Sora had bruises and cuts from the crash. His ribs were cracked. But they were alive, and 300 beings who had been slaves were now free. When they returned to Earth, there was no celebration. They landed at the secret facility and were immediately taken to medical care. Director met them in the recovery room. You disobeyed direct orders, she said. Yes, ma'am, Minyu replied. Was quiet for a long moment, then she nodded. Good, next mission briefing is in 2 weeks, get healed up. She left without another word. There would be no medals, no commendations, no recognition. The 300 rescued beings would tell their stories, but they would never know who had saved them. They would report it as an internal rebellion. The Alliance would accept that explanation because the truth was too dangerous. Lay in her medical bed and stared at the ceiling. She was 18 years old. She had just saved 300 lives, and no one would ever know. This was what it meant to be a ghost. In the present day, stood in the Academy's combat simulation room. Around her, 15 other cadets prepared for the training exercise. The scenario was standard, something every graduate had to complete. A terrorist cell had taken hostages in a civilian station. The cadets had to plan and execute a rescue operation. The instructors expected it to take 6 hours. Most teams spent 4 hours on planning alone, carefully considering every variable and risk. Finished the entire exercise in 47 minutes. She moved through the holographic environment like a predator. Every action was precise and brutal. She identified the terrorist positions instantly, predicted their responses, and struck before they could react. Her breaching techniques were textbook perfect but applied with a speed that shocked the watching instructors. When the simulation ended, all hostages were safe. All terrorists were neutralized, had suffered only minor simulated injuries. It was the fastest completion time in Academy history. Her friend found her in the locker room afterward. He was 22, a year younger than, with an open face that showed every emotion. Right now, it showed confusion and concern. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" he asked. Pulled off her training gear and did not answer. "Seriously, that was not normal. You moved like you have done this before, like you have done it 100 times. Sat down next to her. "I have known you for 3 years. You never talk about before the academy. Why?" Looked at him, was a good person. He wanted to help people, to make the galaxy better. He believed in honor and justice. She could not tell him the truth. It would break something in him. "Because some things are better left in the past," she said finally. But had seen the simulation results. He stood in his office, reviewing the footage. He watched breach the terrorist stronghold, and something clicked in his mind. He had seen similar techniques before, during the war. Special operations units moved like that. Elite commandos trained for years to achieve that level of skill. Was 24 years old. Began digging deeper. He could not access her classified files, but he could research around them. He started looking at unsolved incidents in the Alliance over the past 6 years. Mysterious rescues, unexplained deaths of criminals and warlords, events that made no sense but had favorable outcomes. One caught his attention. 4 years ago, a warlord named had died suddenly. The official report said it was a clan rivalry, an assassination by political enemies, but had known. The warlord had been paranoid and careful, surrounded by loyal guards. Killing him should have been impossible. Yet someone had done it. Found something else in the reports. Before his death, had obtained Alliance bioweapons from a corrupt official. He had been planning to use them against a rival clan. Billions could have died, but the bioweapons had disappeared. They were destroyed in the same incident that killed. The investigation had been brief. The Alliance was relieved the crisis was over. They did not ask too many questions about how it ended. Realized he was looking at another ghost mission, and he suspected had been part of it. He was right. 4 years earlier, had been 20 years old and leading her own Ghost Protocol team. The mission briefing had been clear and terrible. Had to be stopped. The Alliance could not act officially because had powerful political allies. If he was killed by Alliance forces, it could start a civil war among the clans. Ghost Protocol was the only option. His team included a 19-year-old operative on his second mission and a veteran sniper who was 31. They were good people, brave and skilled, but this mission was different from the others. This was not a rescue or a theft. This was an assassination. The plan required to infiltrate's inner circle. She would pretend to be a human mercenary willing to sell military secrets. It was dangerous, was suspicious by nature. One mistake would mean death. Had argued against the plan. The psychological cost is too high, he had said. You will have to become someone else, live among them, earn their trust, then betray it. That will damage you. Had looked at the intelligence reports, images of the bioweapons, projections showing millions of dead civilians. Billions will die if we fail, she had replied. I can carry the damage. So she became someone else. She became a cold, ruthless mercenary with no loyalty except to money. She met with representatives and offered to sell Earth's defense codes. She endured their tests, their interrogations, their suspicions. Himself had questioned her for 6 hours. He used drugs and intimidation. He had her followed. He tested her story from every angle, held her cover, never breaking, never showing fear. Finally, believed her. She was invited to his fortress world during a diplomatic summit. It was the perfect opportunity. While politicians talked in the grand halls, would be allowed access to the secure levels where the bioweapons were stored. But then everything went wrong. Was captured while conducting reconnaissance. Security forces found him outside the fortress perimeter. They took him to the interrogation cells. Received the emergency signal from his tracker before it was destroyed. She faced an impossible choice. They could abort the mission and try to rescue, but that would alert and he would move the bioweapons. The chance to stop him would be lost, or they could continue the mission and leave behind. Made the call, we proceed. Had stared at her in disbelief. He is 19 years old, he is one of us. And billions of people will die if we fail, said. Her voice was steady, but inside she was screaming. We proceed. Created a diversion, drawing guards away from the bioweapon storage. Used the chaos to access the secure level. She found the weapons in a reinforced vault. They were stored in crystalline containers, beautiful and terrible. Each one could kill millions. She placed charges throughout the vault, enough explosive to destroy the weapons and the entire storage level. The timer was set for 20 minutes. Then she went to find. The warlord was in his private chambers, watching reports of the diversion had created. Entered through a service corridor that her mercenary cover had given her access to. Guards were outside. He was alone. He looked up when she entered, surprised but not alarmed. He still trusted her. What is happening? He asked. Pulled a weapon from her jacket. Justice, she said, and fired. Died quickly. Did not waste time. She ran through the fortress as the charges detonated below. The explosion shook the entire structure. Alarms screamed. Guards ran in every direction. Was at the extraction point with the ship. Did you get? Asked as she climbed aboard. His face told her everything. He did not make it. They killed him when the vault exploded. They thought he was part of it. The ship lifted off as secondary explosions tore through the fortress. Sat in the cargo hold and stared at nothing. Had been 19 years old. He had joined Ghost Protocol because he wanted to help people. Now he was dead in an interrogation cell, and his family would never know what happened to him. Back on Earth, there was no funeral. Officially, had never existed. Director offered counseling services. Refused them. She went to the training rooms instead and worked until her body gave out from exhaustion. When she could not sleep, she thought about last moments. She thought about the choice she had made. She wondered if there had been another way, some option she had not seen. Found her one night in the training room. He sat next to her without speaking for a long time. Finally, he said, "It was not your fault." "I left him behind," replied. "You saved billions of people. That was the mission. That is always the mission." Looked at his hands. "We are ghosts. We do not get to choose easy answers. We get to carry the weight so others do not have to." 2 weeks later, accepted her next mission. She was 20 years old and had already attended more funerals than most people experience in a lifetime. But she kept going because someone had to. In the present day, confronted in a private meeting room, he showed her the files on his death. "You killed a war hero," he said. Met his eyes without flinching. "I killed a mass murderer the Alliance was too afraid to touch." "You had no authority, no sanction. You were acting against Alliance law." "I was acting to save Alliance lives. Billions of them. Your politicians could not make the hard choice, so we made it for them." Was silent. By honor codes, what had done was heroic. She had sacrificed her own honor to protect innocent people. But by Alliance law, she was a criminal. He thought about the cadet in the simulation, moving with deadly precision. He thought about the young woman standing in front of him with scars she would not explain. He thought about all the ghosts who had died in secret, protecting a galaxy that did not know they existed. "How many missions?" he asked quietly. 43, replied. "In 6 years, 43 times we did what needed to be done." Nodded slowly. He should report this. He should follow regulations. But he had been a soldier once before he became an instructor. He understood the difference between rules and right. "I will not report this," he said. "But you need to understand something, Cadet. What you have done, what you have carried, that burden is not yours alone anymore. I see it, and I will not forget." Said nothing, but something changed in her eyes. For the first time since had met her, she looked less alone. The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Was working on a navigation assignment when he noticed the strange data packet on the Academy's network. It was heavily encrypted and addressed to someone called Wraith. The encryption was military grade, the kind used by intelligence agencies. Was good with computers. It was why he had chosen the communications track at the Academy. He should not have been able to see this message at all, but he had been running diagnostics on the network, and the packet had appeared for just a moment before being routed elsewhere. He tracked it. The message was going to his personal data pad. Knew he should not open it. This was classified material, clearly not meant for his eyes, but his friendship with had been built on questions she would not answer. He was worried about her, so he made a choice he would regret. He broke the encryption. The message was short, just 5 words. Protocol Omega, you're needed. Beneath those words was a set of coordinates and a time, 24 hours from now. Location classified. Looked at the sender identification. It was registered to someone named Director. The security clearance level was higher than anything he had ever seen. This was not Academy business. This was something else entirely. He found in the training yard running obstacle courses. She was alone, as usual. When she saw him approaching, she stopped. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately. His face must have shown his fear. He handed her his data pad with the message displayed. "This came for you. I am sorry. I should not have opened it, but I was worried and..." Read the message. For the first time since had known her, he saw real fear in her eyes, not concern, not caution, pure fear. "You should not have seen this," she said quietly. "What is Protocol Omega? Who is Wraith?" asked. "What is happening?" Before she could answer, appeared. "Both of you come with me now." They followed him to a secure conference room. The walls were shielded against all surveillance. Once inside, locked the door and activated a privacy field. Whatever they discussed would not leave this room. A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She wore a dark uniform with no insignia. "Cadet," the woman said. "I am Director. We have not spoken in 2 years, not since Ghost Protocol was officially disbanded. I apologize for breaking that silence." Looked at with new understanding. So the rumors were true. There had been a secret human program, and had been part of it. "Why are you contacting me?" asked. Her voice was controlled but could hear the tension. "Because the galaxy is ending," replied bluntly, "and we need our ghosts one more time." The hologram shifted. It now showed images from the edge of Alliance space. Ships destroyed, planets stripped of all life, entire colonies gone, leaving only barren rock behind. 3 months ago, we made first contact with a species called the Collective, explained. They are a hive mind. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They consume. Every planet they touch becomes part of their network. Every being they capture is absorbed into the hive. More images appeared. Battles between Alliance forces and strange organic ships. The Alliance was losing badly. Every engagement ended with heavy casualties and no victories. "The Alliance military has tried conventional warfare," continued. "It does not work. The Collective adapts too quickly. They learn from every encounter and evolve their defenses. Our generals estimate we have 6 months before they reach core Alliance worlds, maybe less." Spoke for the first time. "What does this have to do with?" "The only way to defeat the Collective is to destroy their central nexus," said. "It is located deep in their territory. Getting there would require a small team to infiltrate past their defenses. The mission success rate is estimated at less than 5%. It is, by every measure, a suicide mission." His holographic eyes focused on. Ghost Protocol was disbanded because the Alliance discovered its existence and demanded we shut it down. They said we were acting outside the law, violating treaty agreements. But now those same Alliance leaders are asking for our help. They need people with experience in impossible missions. They need you." "How many ghosts are left?" asked. 17, replied. "Out of the 73 who served over the years. The others are dead or too damaged to fight. We are calling all 17 back for one final mission." The hologram changed again. It showed a plan. A deep strike into collective territory. A small team would infiltrate the Nexus and plant a quantum destabilization device. The explosion would cascade through the collective's hive network, destroying their central consciousness. Without it, the collective would lose coordination. The Alliance could win. "If you accept this mission, it will be different from before," said. "This will be official. The Alliance Council has approved it. If you succeed, you will finally receive recognition for everything you have done. Medals, honors, public acknowledgement of Ghost Protocol's existence. The galaxy will know what you sacrificed." Stared at. "You cannot do this. It is suicide. They said 5% survival rate. That means you will die." "If I do not go, billions will die," replied. It was the same logic she had used for every mission. Save the many, even if it costs everything. Stepped forward. "You have already given enough. You were a child when they recruited you. You have fought their wars and carried their secrets. You do not owe them this." Was quiet for a long moment. Watched her face, seeing the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was measuring lives, weighing costs, making the same terrible math she had always made. "Who else is coming?" she asked. "Minyu, Sara, and have already confirmed," replied. "The others are arriving at the staging area now." Closed her eyes. Her team, the people she had fought beside for years. They were going, so she would go too. It was that simple. "I have conditions," said, opening her eyes. "Name them," replied. "No more secrets. When this is done, whether we succeed or fail, Ghost Protocol gets every mission, every name, every sacrifice. The Alliance will know what we did in the shadows. They will know the cost of their politics and their rules. Every ghost who died deserves to be remembered." Was silent for a moment, then she nodded, agreed. The Alliance Council has already approved full disclosure. After this mission there will be no more ghosts, only heroes. Turn 2. "I am sorry, I could not tell you before, but now you know. This is who I am. This is what I have always been." Wanted to argue, he wanted to stop her, but he could see in her eyes that the decision was already made. "When do you leave?" "Tonight," replied. The next few hours were a blur. Packed her equipment. She said quiet goodbyes to the few people at the academy who had become friends. She did not tell them where she was going or why. That information was still classified. Found her before she left. "I am coming with you," he said. Shook her head. "This is not your fight. You are my student. You have fought alone for too long." His crystalline skin seemed to glow with determination. "I was a soldier before I was an instructor. I know how to fight. And I will not let you walk into death without someone who believes you deserve to come back." Studied him, then slowly she nodded. "We leave in 2 hours." At the extraction point, a military transport waited. As approached, she saw familiar faces. Minyu stood at the ramp, older now, with more scars and gray in his hair. Sara waved from the pilot's seat, her grin as fierce as ever. Checked his rifle, his movements practiced and calm. They were ghosts, all of them. They had fought in silence and died without glory. But tonight they would fight one more time. And this time the galaxy would know. Climbed aboard the transport. Followed. Watched from the landing pad as the ship lifted off into the night sky. "Come back," he whispered to the stars. "Please come back." But he knew that ghosts rarely returned from the shadows. And this mission was darker than any they had faced before. The ship carrying Task Force Wraith traveled for 3 days through Alliance space before reaching the edge of collective territory. During that time, the 17 ghosts prepared for their final mission. They checked weapons, reviewed intelligence reports, and said quiet goodbyes to each other in case they did not return. watched them and learned what it meant to be human. These were not soldiers following orders. They were volunteers who had chosen this path knowing it would destroy them. They had no illusions about glory or honor. They simply believed that some things were worth dying for. On the third night, Minyu gathered everyone for a briefing. He stood in the center of the cargo hold, a holographic display showing their target. The collective's central nexus was buried inside a massive organic structure that looked like a twisted combination of ship and living creature. Intelligence says the nexus controls the entire hive mind, Minyu explained. Destroy it, and the collective loses coordination. They become individuals instead of one consciousness. The Alliance can handle individuals. How do we get inside? Asked one of the other ghosts, a woman named Bora who specialized in demolitions. We do not sneak in, Sora said with a dark smile. We fly straight at them, take every hit and crash through the outer shell. It will get their attention. Marked weak points on the hologram. Once inside, we fight to the core, plant the device, set the timer, then we run. The running part is optimistic, someone muttered. A few ghosts laughed, but it was hollow laughter. They all knew the odds. Raised a question, what is the escape plan? The ghosts looked at each other. Minyu answered honestly. There is none. The quantum device needs 15 minutes to charge before detonation. The collective will throw everything at us in that time. Our job is to survive long enough to make sure it goes off. 15 minutes, an eternity in combat, understood what that meant. This was truly a one-way mission. Sat alone after the briefing, cleaning her weapon, joined her. You could still turn back, he said. You have already given more than anyone should have to give. Did not look up from her work. I stopped being able to turn back 6 years ago. Every mission, every choice, they all lead here. This is how my story ends. It does not have to be, insisted. Yes, it does, finally met his eyes. I have done terrible things. I have killed people. I have made choices that haunt me. But I did it all to protect others. If I run now, all those sacrifices mean nothing. This is my last chance to make it count for something. The ship reached the collective border the next day. Immediately, organic vessels swarmed toward them. The ships were alive, moving with predatory intelligence. The collective knew they were coming. Everyone to positions, Minyu ordered. Sora, get us inside. Sora pushed the engines to maximum. The ship shook as collective weapons struck the hull. Shields flickered and died. Hull plating burned away. But Sora kept flying, aiming for the largest structure in the distance. The collective nexus filled their view screens. It was enormous, kilometers across, pulsing with bioluminescent energy. Organic tendrils reached out like grasping fingers. Defense systems fired streams of corrosive material. Sora flew through it all. The ship was dying around them, but she kept it together through skill and sheer determination. They hit the outer shell of the Nexus at full speed. The impact was catastrophic. The ship tore apart, scattering debris and bodies, but it breached the shell. The ghosts, wearing heavy armor and carrying their weapons, fell into the Nexus interior. Crashed through organic membranes and hit a solid surface hard enough to crack her helmet. Around her, the other ghosts were landing, some smoothly, others badly. She counted quickly. 15. They had lost 2 in the crash. Form up, Minyu's voice came over the communicator. Head for the core. The interior of the Nexus was a nightmare. Walls pulsed with veins carrying luminescent fluid. The floor was soft and warm, like walking on living tissue, and the collective's defenders were everywhere. They were not machines or creatures. They were both and neither. Humanoid shapes made of the same organic material as the Nexus itself, moving with hive coordination. They attacked in waves, perfect and relentless. The ghosts fought with everything they had learned in 6 years of impossible missions. Found high ground and provided covering fire, his shots precise and deadly. Bora threw explosives that tore through the organic walls. Minyu and led the advance, their movements synchronized from years of fighting together. Fought alongside them. His crystalline skin was harder than armor, and his strength was greater than any human. He became a shield for the team, taking hits that would have killed others. He began to understand why the Alliance feared humanity, not because they were strong, but because they never stopped. No matter how many enemies appeared, no matter how desperate the situation became, the humans kept moving forward. They lost 3 more ghosts in the first corridor, then 2 more when the collective collapsed a ceiling on them. Every loss hurt, but they could not stop. They had to reach the core. Sora was hit by corrosive spray that ate through her armor. She kept fighting, even as her body burned. "Keep going," she shouted. "Do not stop for me." Minyu tried to reach her, but she was already lost. The collective swarmed over her position. Her last transmission was laughter. "See you on the other side, ghosts." They reached the core chamber with 9 survivors. The chamber was vast, filled with pulsing organic structures that seemed to breathe. At the center was a massive brain-like organ, glowing with networked intelligence. This was the collective's mind. "Plant the device," Minyu ordered. Bora ran to the core with the quantum destabilization device. It was the size of a backpack, containing enough energy to tear apart reality itself. She attached it to the organic mass and activated the timer. 15 minutes. The collective knew what they had done. Every defender in the Nexus began converging on their position. The walls themselves seemed to attack, tendrils reaching out to grab and crush. "Defensive positions," Minyu shouted. "We hold here." They formed a circle around the device. 9 ghosts against an endless swarm. The fight became desperate. Ammunition ran low. Armor cracked and failed. They were bleeding and exhausted. Took 3 hits protecting. He fell but kept firing from the ground until his weapon ran dry. Then he drew a knife and kept fighting. "Not today," he growled at the collective. "You do not get today." Realized they were not going to make it. The timer showed 8 minutes remaining and they were being overwhelmed. He looked at, fighting with controlled fury beside him. She deserved to survive this. She deserved to finally receive recognition for everything she had done. He made a decision. "There is another way," shouted over the noise. "The quantum device can be manually. We can trigger it early." "That will kill us all," Minyu replied. "We are already dead," said. "But if we trigger it now, at least we know it goes off." Looked at him. "You said I have fought alone too long. Do not make me leave alone." "I am not," replied. He accessed the device controls, studying the collective technology they had analyzed. His people were experts in crystalline structures and energy patterns. He could see a solution the humans had missed. "I can overload the containment field," he explained rapidly. "It will create a cascade that destabilizes the device in 90 seconds instead of 8 minutes, but I need you to buy me that time." "Do it," Minyu ordered. The remaining ghosts formed a circle. They were down to 6 now. Minyu, Bora, and 1 other ghost named. They fought with everything they had left. Worked frantically, his crystalline fingers manipulating controls designed for organic tissue. The device began to pulse faster, its hum rising in pitch. 60 seconds remaining. Fell, dragged away by tendrils. Bora threw her last explosive and was caught in her own blast, taking dozens of collective defenders with her. 40 seconds. Slag was broken, but he kept fighting. "Tell them we were here," he said to. "Tell them we mattered." "They will know," promised. 20 seconds. The device's hum became a scream. Reality itself began to fracture around it. The collective recognized the danger and threw everything at them. The walls collapsed inward. "Finish the override. It is done. We need to run now." "Where?" Minyu asked. They were surrounded, the walls closing in. Then saw it. A crack in the Nexus shell from their crash landing. It was small, maybe wide enough for 1 person. Beyond it was space, and the Alliance fleet would be close enough to pick up escape pod signals. "There," she pointed, "Minyu, go." "Not without you," Minyu said. "That is an order, sir," replied with a small smile. "Someone has to make sure the device goes off." 10 seconds. Grabbed Minyu and dragged him toward the crack. "She is right, move." They ran and stood together at the device fighting the last wave of defenders. 5 seconds. "I am glad I met you," said. "Same," replied. The device detonated. Reality tore apart. The explosion cascaded through the nexus, through the collective network, fracturing the hive mind. Across collective space, ships stopped mid-flight. Defenders collapsed. The single consciousness shattered into billions of confused individuals. The Alliance fleet moved in, finding an enemy that could no longer coordinate, no longer adapt. The battle was won. 2 weeks later stood in the Academy's Grand Hall. She was bruised and bandaged, but alive. Somehow, impossibly, she had survived. Had shielded her at the last moment, his crystalline body absorbing most of the blast. He was damaged but regenerating. Minyu and had made it to an escape pod. 6 ghosts had survived the mission. The rest were gone, including Sara, Bora, and so many others. The hall was filled with representatives from all 17 Alliance species. Cameras recorded everything. This ceremony would be broadcast across the galaxy. Director stood at the podium, reading from a document. For 6 years, Ghost Protocol conducted 43 classified missions. They rescued thousands of beings. They stopped wars. They eliminated threats the Alliance could not officially confront. And they did it all without recognition, without support, without anyone knowing they existed. Holographic displays showed mission summaries. The rescue at 9. The assassination of dozens of others. The audience watched in stunned silence as they learned what humans had been doing in the shadows. "Today, we honor their sacrifice," continued. "We acknowledge that while the Alliance debated and delayed, these warriors acted. They paid the price for our politics." One by one, the surviving ghosts were called forward. Medals were placed on their chests. Commendations read aloud. The list was long, each one representing a mission that had saved lives. When it was turn, the citations filled the hall. Read them all. Every mission, every impossible choice, every teammate lost. The medals were heavy, dozens of them, more than she could count. The audience stood and applauded, but felt nothing. She looked at the medals and saw only the faces of those who were not here to receive theirs. After the ceremony, found her at the memorial wall that had been erected for Ghost Protocol's fallen. 56 names were carved into black stone. "You never wanted the medals, did you?" he asked. Touched the wall, her fingers tracing Sara's name, then all the others. "The people who deserved medals are the ones who cannot wear them anymore. I am just still here." "What will you do now?" asked. Watched new cadets walking through the hall, young and hopeful, unburdened by secrets. "I will teach. Someone has to make sure the next generation does not have to become ghosts." She turned to face. The Alliance is changing. Humanity is a full member now. Maybe things will be different. Maybe the next crisis will not require people to die in the shadows. "Maybe," agreed. "But if it does, at least now we know what sacrifice looks like. We know the cost of asking people to become invisible." Saluted the memorial one last time. Behind her, the medals on her chest caught the light, but they felt hollow. The real weight was in her memories, in the names on the wall, in the knowledge that she had survived when so many had not. But she would carry that weight. She would remember them all. And she would make sure the galaxy never forgot what Ghost Protocol had done. As she walked away, the last line of the memorial plaque seemed to glow in the light. May they never be forgotten. May their sacrifice never be required again. Hoped that would be true, but she was a soldier, and soldiers knew better than to believe in peace. There would be other threats, other impossible missions. But next time, maybe they would not have to be unofficial. Maybe the next generation would fight in the light instead of the shadows. That was enough. That was worth all the medals in the galaxy.